We're back from our short break, Mr. Martin, talking at this time to those of you who have just tuned in to Jim Martin, well known in the Greene County area, well known for his activism in consumer affairs and governmental issues, but we have him here today to talk about the military, and we do this to honor those who have served this great country and protected our legal rights, not the least of which involves due process. This tape is being done, and we are producing this program a day or so before the 11th of November, Veterans Day, and we were talking at the break to Jim Martin about his experience on D-Day in Europe in June of 1944, and we talked about at the break those persons who were literally shot and killed as they attempted to paratroop or jump from the airplanes. And you try to envision this armada of some, I don't know how many, Jim, you said planes were in the air at that time?
About 1,000 planes.
About 1,000 to 1,200 planes, approximately 15 to 20 persons. I mean, we're talking 20,000 airborne paratroops jumping. Were you jumping how far inland? And when we talk about Normandy, there's a beach at Normandy.
10 to 15 miles inland.
Wow.
Our mission was to knock out the big guns, also the coastal defenses, the big guns down on the coast, and disrupt communications by cutting wires for land communication, and prevent reinforcements from reaching the beach forces.
Yes, because was this a simultaneous operation?
Yes.
Well, when D-Day occurred, were they hitting the beaches at the same time you were jumping?
Yeah.
Or did you? Or you?
They came
you
in. They
them?
came in later.
They came
several
in,
hours.
You preceded them by a few hours.
Well, see, we actually jumped around 1 to 1:30, and they didn't come in around 5 or 6 in the morning.
In the morning.
Yeah.
And they were in.
That gave us time to do.
And they were in amphibious vehicles?
Yes.
And how many of those guys were the Marines and Army both coming in?
I don't know if there's any Marine forces. They had Rangers, and they had the most difficult job of scaling the cliffs. But our people, Colonel West and his group knocked out 4 of the big coastal guns. That's the ones that were shelling the ships out in the channel.
Wow.
And they went in and took all those out. They had also all the machine guns around them. Those guys really did a marvelous job. And by the pilots panicking the way they did, we didn't all drop where we're supposed to. We were scattered all over the peninsula. That was both good and bad. It was bad for our organization, but it also disrupted the Germans and panicked them because they just thought there were 5 or 6 times as many people as there were. So instead of a big organized group as we had planned, there was small groups of people fighting all over the place. And it thoroughly disorganized the German troops. They just didn't know what was happening. We had been taught that these kinds of things could happen, and we were taught to be able to fight in individually or small groups, which we did. It was a very successful operation. We had been told we'd be there 3 days and pulled out. But somebody up above decided that we're going to stay there, so we were there 30 days.
Wow.
There was some grumbling about that, but they didn't have anybody else to put in doing what we were doing, so that's what we did.
What'd you do when you hit the ground? You jump out of an airplane,
loaded
up with over 100 pounds of equipment. Your job is to assist in mortar fire to knock out German Nazi gun installations and or other shelling operations. Now, you hit the ground. I mean,
First thing
you hit a tree? Were there trees there?
Oh, yeah, there's trees, and also they had obstacles set up, poles and wires and things to disrupt airborne operations. Particularly the gliders that came in after us. And first thing you do is get out of your chute. And the Germans had opened the floodgates and flooded a lot of the lowland, and many of the troops went into those areas and drowned because they couldn't get out of their chutes fast enough. So there was a lot of disorganization and a lot of things that were just not planned.
Well, that's usually the case, isn't it?
Well, yeah, it's chaotic.
It is chaotic.
And when the gliders came in the morning, they had all these poles set up, and these gliders had the wings dropped off, and they ran into obstacles, and the Jeep and the thing would come right through the front of it and wipe the guys out that were in the glider, and it was just general chaos. And
How many of the guys that jumped out of those airplanes, the 20,000 guys, actually survived to do battle?
I can't tell for the whole division, but we had 1,800 in my regiment, and we had about 400 killed in that operation.
400 killed in that operation.
That doesn't count the wounded.
Jim, when you hit the ground and you looked around, did you see a lot of your other guys? that
No.
were with you, or were you by yourself?
I was alone for a while, and then I ran into my sergeant. and
How
he-
frightening that must have been, to be alone out there behind enemy lines.
Well, it is frightening and it's exhilarating, and it's it's scary. But that's what you train for, and that's what you're told will happen.
What were you told to do?
We were told to assemble on a certain spot.
Did you do that?
Oh yeah, and get together with the others, and then do what we're supposed to do, which is to disrupt the enemy, cut the communication lines, capture the big guns that were shelling the ships in the channel, things of that nature, and then prevent any reinforcements from reaching the German beach forces. That was a primary mission because their defense was
Cut
thin.
them off, cut them off.
Yeah, they didn't have defense in depth, so they needed the reinforcements coming, and if they couldn't get the reinforcements, they didn't stand a good chance.
And were you successful in keeping them?
Oh
getting
yeah,
them?
absolutely, very
So
successful.
you formed a line? I mean, you kept them,
Well,
you kept them at bay until we could get
It
control
wasn't
of the beach?
really a line. You commanded the roads and disrupted their communications, things of that nature. Blew up tanks, anything that was around that you could disrupt, you did.
Did you get to a point, Jim, you were on that peninsula, if you will, in Normandy for how long, 30 days?
33 days.
33 days, and did you get to a point in time where you were locked in combat?
Oh, sure.
Tell me about that.
After about the third day, that's when you had to organize combat. And it was a matter of being close, 25, 30, 40 yards. Now that peninsula has what are called hedgerows. Actually, these are earthen mounds that run anywhere from 5 feet to 6, 7 feet tall with vegetation, trees and things on top of them. That's the fencing between fields. And
I see, sure.
you've seen movies where the guy says over the top.
Yeah.
Well, the first time that happened, it was just like a movie. We were all along this hedge line, behind this dike, and a lieutenant says over the top. There's an 88 millimeter gun on the other side, about 50 yards away.
Shooting at you.
2 or 3 machine guns.
Trying to kill you.
And he says, go over the top, and you go over the top.
Knowing full well you might get killed.
Oh,
midair.
absolutely. And you go from one hedgerow to another. As they fall back, you follow. And that's the way it is. And of course, we didn't have any medical detachments organized at that time. It was several days before they got an aid station set up. In the meantime,
So how many guys are we talking about that were here going over the top?
Well, these operations went on all over the peninsula with all the groups.
How about yours? How many guys were together there?
We had about 150.
So about 150 guys.
And you go right over the top into the machine gun and artillery fire.
Do you know where that machine gun was?
Well, you didn't know exactly because you couldn't see. I mean, they were behind another hedgerow.
They were bunkered in, weren't they?
They were bunkered in, and you're going right across an open field.
Well, where was the artillery? How far away was that coming in at you? Because you don't know where that's coming.
Those 88s that we were after were firing point blank.
Wow.
They were less than 100 yards away.
My word. And they had FOs out there. Well, they didn't even need FOs,
They
did
didn't need them. They could see you coming.
And they just unloaded on you.
That's right.
Well, Jim, I mean, how long did this go on, this over-the-top business?
Well, this over-the-top business was about a week.
But, I mean, how long in one setting did you keep doing this? I mean,
Oh.
how many hours?
Probably the first 12 hours was that kind of fighting, just from one hedgerow to another.
Well, is it an accurate assumption on my part to say the fact that you're back here, and still alive and still going, you were lucky?
Well, luck is what it is.
Am I right that there's no skill involved? Well, there's some things you do and don't do, of course, but there's really you're just laid out to dry.
When you're out there going straight into somebody's machine gun fire, it's the luck of the draw, purely and simply. And it depends on whether or not you got the fortitude to keep going, which our guys did. And when you see all you've seen these movies where all these bullets are coming in and nobody falls. Well, that's the way it is. It's amazing how much fire can come at you and you still dodge it. And you can't dodge, you're just going straight head on into it.
You're just hoping for the best.
You're hoping for the best.
You pretty well figure you're going to die.
Well, we were told early on about 90% of us would die. I think that was a psychological thing to make you not get really upset when you saw how bad it really was.
You're there and you're on that battlefield and there's guys that are all around you that they're dropping. And
Yep.
they're dying, aren't they?
Yep. German and American.
Were you at a point, Jim, where you had yourself to kill people? I mean, knowingly, or did you ever really know?
Oh, yeah, yeah. When you're that close, you do see people fall that you know you did. But you can't stop to ruminate about that kind of thing. You're in the height of
a war.
of adrenaline, and you don't even think about those things. All you're thinking is doing what the officer said. Now, there's another thing about airborne troops. The lieutenant is there on the front with you. He's not behind you telling you what to do. He's leading the charge. And we had more lieutenants killed than you can imagine.
Because they were at the front
They
point.
were at the front.
They were at the point.
We had a first lieutenant and a second lieutenant, and they were both right up there with us. They were the inspiration. When you saw them go over the top of one of those hedgerows, there was no way you're going to hesitate.
Where were these guys from? All over the country?
All over the United States.
All over the United States. And were they all about the same age?
We had guys from 16 to 21, 22.
My God. You look back on this now, Jim, we're sitting here. My golly, we've been past the 50th reunion of this.
Yep.
And I remember when you had your 50th reunion. Did you go to Europe?
I was slated to go over and make the jump over there, and then something came up. One of my sons was getting a divorce, and everything was tied up, and I didn't get to go.
Didn't get to go. Have you had reunions with any of these guys?
Oh, yes.
Where do you see them?
Oh, the last one was in Tucson, Arizona.
Is that recently?
Mm-hmm.
How many of these guys?
We've had 2 reunions at our house.
How many guys are still around?
Well, we generally have, with their wives, we've had as many as 100 come.
Wow, from all over the country.
Stan Clever, who lives just outside of Xenia, was a sergeant in my outfit, and he and I and his wife and my wife hosted 2 reunions here.
You look back on this, Jim. How do you feel about it? I mean, you know, what's it mean to you?
I feel sorry for those who didn't get to go.
Yeah.
Before I had gone, and had I never gone, I would be very provincial. But when you go out and you meet people from different walks of life, from all over the United States, the whole perspective of life changes for the good. These are people, most of whom I would never have had any association with whatsoever had I not been in an outfit like that. But when you get in an outfit like that and you train together, as we did for all those months, you're closer than you are to your wife in a lot of ways. You're stripped down to the bare essentials. There's no false fronts or anything of that nature.
No dress rehearsal, is there?
No, none.
No
And
dress
you know when you go there, after you've been through airborne training, that every man is there is going to stay with you. There's nobody going to falter. It's a nice feeling. And today, we see those people, we talk to those people, we visit those people, and they come to see us, and we pick up conversations as if it were yesterday.
It's a strong bond.
Very strong bond.
Jim, that's amazing how fast a half hour can go.
Yes,
and
it
I'm
is.
glad we had this opportunity. I've never really talked to you at length about this experience. And on behalf of all of us here at Time Warner and people of Greene County and people that I associate with, we first and foremost thank you for what you've done for our country and for allowing us to have the freedoms that we have. And secondly, for being here. And we wish you well. And perhaps we can do another program at another time, depending on the good powers that be here, about your community activism. I wish you the very best.
Thank you.